Hello, folks, and welcome to Author Adjacent, a podcast about the journey from hobbyist writer to professional author. I'm your host, Michael Vadney. If you're listening to this, you might not be comfortable calling yourself an author. Even I'm not there yet, but I am Author Adjacent. Before we dive into today's episode, there's a little something I want to share with you all. I am not a professional author. What I am is a man with a dream and a drive to pursue it. I started this podcast as a fellow journeyman on the path from writer to author in the hopes that what I have learned along the way will help you fulfill your own dreams. Now for today's topic. It's the first Friday of May, which means this is a Reading to Write episode, where I discuss the books I read the previous month, provide my reviews, and share the lessons I learned as an author-adjacent writer from each one. Why? Because writers are readers too. Aspiring authors benefit greatly from delving into stories and refining their analytical skills. This practice offers valuable insights into how successful authors craft their narratives, helping us identify the techniques that we can use to enhance our own writing. Understanding why we did or did not like a story can help us recognize the setting, characters, plots, conflict, or themes that may resonate with our readers. So remember to ask yourself why you react certain ways to books you consume. Did you really like that character arc when the protagonist goes from being kind and naive to a one-man army badass? Maybe that should be included in your next project. Did the romantic subplot of this noir mystery feel forced or contrived? Ask yourself what would have made it better. Thinking of and answering these questions will help you understand what does and does not work in a novel, and more importantly, why. If you read a story and didn't enjoy it, take a moment to reflect on why. Was it a matter of personal preference? Did the genre, theme, or familiar elements fail to resonate with you? Or was there a specific aspect of the storytelling that didn't work for you? Analyzing the reasons behind your reactions to stories can improve your writing skills by helping you understand how to approach various elements in your own work. So today I'll back up these words by providing my reviews of the 6 books I read in April of 2024. These reviews will be spoiler-free, but I will be sharing each story's blurb so that you can have an idea of what I'm talking about. You have been warned. I invite you to check out any of these books that capture your interest. Without any further delay, let's dive in. The first book I read for April of 2024 was Breach of Peace by Daniel B. Greene. For the folks who are not aware, Daniel Greene is a YouTuber whose content centers around sci-fi and fantasy book reviews, news, and author interviews. In March of 2021, he published his first book. Breach of Peace is a novella which hits that sweet spot of story length between novel and a short story. Just as I did in last month, I'll start these reviews by channeling my inner narrator for diving into the story's blurb. When an imperial family is found butchered, officers of God are called to investigate. Evidence points to a rebel group trying to stab fear into the very heart of the empire. Inspector Clyde begins a harrowing hunt for those responsible, but when a larger conspiracy comes to light, she struggles to trust even the officers around her. I found Breach of Peace to be a compelling narrative with strong influential ties to Brandon Sanderson's second Mistborn trilogy. While I enjoyed the story, I can't say that I loved it. I found that the story had a strong core narrative that I was interested in seeing played out, but found several inconsistencies that would disrupt my immersion. These moments often hit me as fridge logic when I had stepped away from the story. If you're not familiar with the term, fridge logic is the moment when something in a story that didn't bother you at the time suddenly strikes you as odd or illogical upon later reflection. Despite this, I must commend Greene for how he handled Clyde's transition in ideology, especially within the limited space of a novella. Overall, I found Breach of Peace to be a decent book, but I think it needed another pass before heading to publication. The lesson I learned from reading this story was to be careful about evoking too strong a similarity to a popular author's work. Through no fault of Greene, I found it difficult to split my own knowledge or baggage associated with the Mistborn series due to similar terms and setting used in both books. As author-adjacent writers, it's important to be aware of these biases in our potential readers and be prepared to handle them. Despite everything I've said, I would still give Breach of Peace a 3 out of 5. It was an entertaining story and well written for the narrative. I think I just wanted a tighter plot. Greene has 2 other books, one attached to this novella as a sequel, and I've added both to my TBR. For the new people, TBR stands for To Be Read. It's usually just the giant pile of books in the corner that's staring at you going, don't buy another book until you finish at least one of these, but then you buy another book. Anyways, before I get into the rest of the books I read in April, I have a confession. With the exception of Daniel B. Greene's Breach of Peace, the entire month was dedicated to the Dungeon Crawler Carl series by Matt Dinniman. And hot damn am I excited to talk about it. So for the rest of this episode, I'm going to briefly go over each book I've covered so far in the series, and then discuss the lessons I learned from them as a whole. With each book, I'll still be channeling my inner narrator for the blurbs, in the hopes that some random Hollywood exec hears this episode and flies me in to do voiceover work for the next wildlife movie. Outside of the blurbs, I'll still be keeping my commentary spoiler-free, so let's get into it. Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinniman. A man, his ex-girlfriend's cat, a sadistic game show unlike anything in the universe, a dungeon crawl where the survival depends on killing your prey in the most entertaining way possible. In a flash, every human-erected construction on Earth, from Buckingham Palace to the tiniest of sheds, collapses in a heap, sinking into the ground. The buildings and all the people inside have all been atomized and transformed into the dungeon, an 18-level labyrinth filled with traps, monsters, and loot. A dungeon so enormous it encircles the entire globe. Only a few dare venture inside, but once you're in, you can't get out. And what's worse, each level has a time limit. You have but days to find a staircase to the next level down, or it's game over. In this game, it's not about your strength or your dexterity. It's about your followers and your views, your clout. It's about building an audience and killing those goblins with style. You can't just survive here. You gotta survive big. You gotta fight with vigor, with excitement. You gotta make them stand up and cheer. And if you have that it factor, you may just find yourself with a following. That's the only way to truly survive in this game, with the help of the loot boxes dropped upon you by the generous benefactors watching from across the galaxy. They call it Dungeon Crawler World, but for Carl, it's anything but a game. Whew! I know that was a long one. I promise you that the rest of them are much shorter. I understand that the blurb makes the whole concept sound ridiculous, and that's because it is. After receiving multiple recommendations from friends, family, and even strangers on the internet, I finally decided to pick up Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinniman. The narrative follows the adventures of Carl and Donut, 2 unlikely companions navigating a perilous dungeon filled with quests and challenges. I've dabbled in lit RPGs in the past, but usually as a break between heavier reads. But this stands out as one of the most entertaining reads I have ever come across. I've been describing it to anyone who will listen as the best action comedy I have ever experienced. The humor is abundant throughout the story, maintaining a light and enjoyable tone. While not every joke may land for every reader, they never overstay their welcome, ensuring a consistently entertaining read. Dungeon Crawler Carl may not be considered highbrow literature, but it is undeniably enjoyable. Despite all that, I still would not consider this a 5 out of 5 book, simply because it's still just an action comedy. But I'll talk more about that as we get further into the series. Carl's Doomsday Scenario by Matt Dinniman. The trading levels have concluded. Now the games may truly begin. The ratings and views are off the charts. The fans just can't get enough. The dungeon gets more dangerous each day. But in a grinder designed to chew up and spit out crawlers by the millions, Carl and Princess Donut need to work harder than ever just to survive. They call it the Overcity, a sprawling, once thriving metropolis devastated by a mysterious calamity. But these streets are far from abandoned. An undead circus trawls the ruins, murdered prostitutes rain from the sky, an ancient spell is finally ready to reveal its dark purpose. The second book of this series picks up right where the last one left off, with a stronger medieval fantasy bend to the setting. While still a solid 4 out of 5, Carl's Doomsday Scenario got dangerously close to becoming a 3-star story for me. The action comedy vibe of the narrative still runs strong here and is still a wildly entertaining adventure. But Dinniman started to lose me with the narrative structure of this tale, as the book felt like two novellas slapped together rather than a single connected plot. But what carried me through the story was the character development that started to emerge in the series, particularly in the case of Donut. Unlike Carl, whose changes primarily involve revealing aspects of his existing personality, Donut undergoes active growth throughout the story. Her transformation is gradual, natural, and easily discernible to readers, offering a satisfying narrative arc. The evolving relationship between Carl and Donut is a central focus, transitioning from the mere companionship to a deeper emotional connection. Dinniman skillfully portrays their vulnerability and reliance on each other, laying the groundwork for a powerful dynamic. Carl's Doomsday scenario is a worthy successor to the flash fire that was the first book. While some narrative elements may falter, the strengths of this series still shine through. The Dungeon Anarchist's Cookbook by Matt Dinniman. The top 10 list is populated, the sponsorship program is open, the difficulty is ramping up. The first 3 floors were nothing compared to what Carl and Donut now face. The Iron Tangle, an impossibly complicated subway system built out of the world's subterranean railway systems, all combined and then tied together into a knot. Up is down, down is up, close is far, the cars are filled with monsters, the railway stations are less than safe, and the exit is always just a few stops away. But there is hope. For the first time, the crawlers are all working together. The loot is better than ever, and the secret to unraveling it all may be hidden in the pages of a seemingly useless book. Welcome, crawlers. Welcome to the 4th floor of the dungeon. Alright folks, this is it. This is the one that took the series from good to fan-fucking-tastic. It's so good, I just dropped the first F-bomb of author adjacent for it. It's in the 3rd book of Dungeon Crawler Carl's series that Matt Dinniman really tightens up the narrative and starts to present a truly well-crafted story. The Dungeon Anarchist Cookbook is where the stakes are raised, the world is fleshed out, and most importantly, the themes begin to shine. As I stated for previous books, this series is the best action comedy you will find. But what was lacking before was true depth of what a story means. In this story, the series defends its title as the best action comedy I have ever read, but now things are getting serious in a way that action flicks from the 90s never could. I'm sure it is of no surprise that I marked this as a 5 out of 5 for me. The ending gave me chills that had me running across the house, shouting at my wife how goddamn cool it was. Thankfully, she had just finished the book the week before me and shared in my enthusiasm. Damn, I'm getting hyped just thinking about it. This is a spoiler-free review, so I will not ruin anything, but the Dungeon Anarchist Cookbook is, by far, in my opinion, the best in the series. The Gate of the Feral Gods by Matt Dinniman. New achievement! Total, utter failure. You failed a quest less than 5 minutes after you received it. Now that's talent. A floating fortress occupied by warrior gnomes, a castle made of sand, a derelict submarine guarded by malfunctioning machines, a haunted crypt surrounded by lethal traps. It was supposed to be easy, 1 bubble, 4 castles, 15 days. Capture each one and the stairwell is unlocked. Here's the thing, it's never easy. Carl and his team can't go it alone. Not this time. They must rely on the help of the low-level, I can't believe these idiots are still alive crawlers trapped in the bubble with them. But can they be trusted? Welcome, crawler. Welcome to the 5th floor of the dungeon. The Gate of the Feral Gods further develops many of the side characters of the series while still managing a balance of Carl and Donut at center stage. Carl's commitment to saving others, even at personal risk, remains a central theme, with the narrative highlighting the resilience and growth of previously sidelined characters. The story takes a darker turn as Carl deliberately challenges the game's rules and confronts those exploiting his world for entertainment, leading to unexpected consequences and heightened stakes. Despite the darker tone, the action comedy vibe of the series still runs strong, making for a well-rounded story. There is a section of the story where I became lost and wasn't sure what the characters' goals were, but then Dinniman made up for it with another fantastic, chill-inducing ending. While The Gate of the Feral Gods was not as strong as its predecessor, it continues to be a great story that led me hungrily devouring the next one. The Butcher's Masquerade by Matt Dinniman. Attention, attention, the gates are down. The hunters are loose. Run, run, run! A lush jungle teeming with danger. Savage dinosaurs seeking blood. A fallen princess intent on vengeance. A mysterious end-of-floor celebration for the top crawlers dubbed the Butcher's Masquerade. The sixth floor, the hunting grounds. As the remaining crawlers battle for their lives, a new, terrible threat looms. Outside tourists are finally allowed to enter the game, and they are here and ready to hunt. Among them is Vra, a famed and veteran hunter intent on collecting the biggest trophy of her career. But their prey is far from harmless, and this season, they are fighting back. My final read for April was another fantastic addition to the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. The Butcher's Masquerade continues to expertly balance the action, comedy, and emotional impact in a way that has me tearing through these books. Book 5 of the series is another great highlight that even challenged the Dungeon Anarchist Cookbook as my favorite in the series. While The Butcher's Masquerade is a roller coaster of an adventure that keeps you gripping the lap bar with every twist and turn, it's still only a 4 out of 5 for me. What kept this book from unseating my favorite in the series was Donut. This story is focused more on Carl as a solitary main character, while Donut is mostly regulated to the position of plot device. Donut is still there. She is still cracking fantastic, sassy quips, but her purpose in the story is mostly just to move the plot forward. In contrast, Carl goes through an amazing narrative arc in this story. Every page, I was eager to know what he was going to do next. He was so enrapturing that I didn't even notice that Donut was sidelined until I'd finished the story. And what a finish it was! Dinniman has done a fantastic job of balancing tension and relief through rising stakes, action, and laughs. But he truly pulls out all the stops for the ending of The Butcher's Masquerade. So what did we learn from reading the first 5 books of the Dungeon Crawler Carl series? I think there are 3 great things we can learn from Matt Dinniman. First is character development and relatability. This series has many fantastic characters that grow in slow, organic ways. Every action a character takes makes sense from that character's point of view, making them feel absolutely real. Second, balancing story elements. Another thing that Dinniman does very well is maintaining a balance between the humor, action, and character-driven storytelling. This creates a dynamic and engaging narrative that keeps the reader entertained while maintaining a sense of urgency and stakes within the story. And third, structural cohesion. The last thing we can learn from reading the Dungeon Crawler Carl series is the importance of cohesive structure in our stories. While a novel tends to be a series of events, those events need to be connected from start to finish and make a solid plotline. The only times I felt these books were lacking was when I was experiencing an unclear narrative. Alright folks, that is going to wrap us up for this episode of Author Adjacent. Thanks for hanging out with me today as I reviewed my 2024 April reads and shared what I learned from them. Once again, I'm Michael Vadney. If any of this was helpful or even just gave you a good chuckle, consider supporting the show by leaving a review on your podcast platform of choice or telling a friend about the show. For more Author Adjacent, you can follow me on X at Author Adjacent or shoot me an email at authoradjacent@gmail.com with your burning questions, comments, or topic ideas. New episodes drop every other week, so stay tuned. Now remember, the journey from writer to author might be long, but until then, let's be author adjacent together.